Nature of social change in India. In the previous lessons, we were discussing about social mobility, social change, Sanskritization and Westernization. All these processes have played a significant role in exposing Indian culture to expand to a level of nationalism, humanitarianism, secularism and global norms. But the end result of these processes is not a uniform transformation in all regions and groups. The nature of social change that pervaded India is of different kind as perceived by various sociologists. We point out to Indian culture as a single whole uniformly observed and adopted by every single Indian. In reality, Indian culture is a complex unit with great variations and characteristics. Variations are found in region wise and also community wise. At broader level, there are two conspicuous divisions or practices in Indian society. They are, as Yogendra Singh has elaborated, are the little tradition and great tradition. An overview of these two concepts will enable us to understand the contrast as well as uniformity that prevail in Indian culture. These concepts were coined by sociologist Robert Redfield. Little tradition. Little traditions are the local customs and practices that did not necessarily conform with the dominant classes, that is, with the great tradition that prevails all over India. In the formal illiterate traditional found in rural areas, the traditions of little communities like rural people or communities of smaller territory are known as little tradition. This tradition is cultivated at home and people do not question it. It is transmitted from one generation to another. Little tradition is criticized as superstitious. In simple words, little tradition consists of local customs, rites, rituals, dialects, folk dance, riddles and proverb and worship of local deities. God Ayanar, Mariamman and Yellayamman are examples of gods of local tradition. These gods have local mythology and modes of worship. Primarily, little tradition belongs to villages or tiny cities. Great tradition. The observance of rituals and customs followed by priests and rulers are classified as great tradition. It is a tradition of the lettered people. They are reflective, sophisticated, systemized and universal. This tradition is cultivated in separate and distinct institutions such as temples. Great tradition refers to the formal literate tradition of a culturalization which is regulated by the elites of the society. Great epics like Ramayana, Mahabharata and other religious scriptures of Hinduism are examples of great tradition. Worship of Lord Krishna and Lord Shiva is found all over India, maybe with some variations in their names and celebrations. Celebration of Diwali, Mahasankranti is also included in great tradition. Interaction between great and little tradition. The great and little traditions are not polarized facts of Indian tradition. They are many times complementary. The interaction between these two traditions causes changes and growth in the culture. It created common cultural consciousness among Indians formed by certain factors like rituals. For instance, the folk dance and drama that are unique to a particular area mostly base their theme or story on Ramayana and Mahabharata that are a part of a great tradition. The worship of local deities like Muniyandi, Ayanar is peculiar to a territory. But when a keen explanation is sought, we find similarity in the basic principles of great gods. For example, the myths relating to the deity, the rituals like using camphor, breaking coconut and wearing sacred ash are found to be a common between the great and little traditions. The interaction between cultural traditions is two-way. One, the elements of Sanskritic culture have undergone changes in various forms of little traditions of different areas. Simultaneously, the local practices and beliefs have entered into the main body of Sanskritic beliefs, customs and myths. The celebrations of Deepavali and Dasara bear common features all over India, but we can notice regional peculiarities. The way Deepavali and Pongal are celebrated in the north and in southern localities bear common name of major rituals, but minor practices are different. In great tradition in the celebration of Dasara, puja and rituals are emphasized, whereas in the local tradition, performing folk drama, terukuthu and golu are the features. Under this context, it may also be noticed that the Brahmins who believe in high sounding mantras for great gods, worshipping local deities who guards people from epidemics, protecting crops, children and cattle from evil powers. Throughout India, the great Sanskrit Hinduism absorbed local and folk elements that provides a continuity between the original and philosophical level. Owing to the changes caused by technology within the entire social system, caste hierarchy also underwent changes. Unlike the class stratification in which vertical movement is approved, in the caste system, the mobility was mostly horizontal. While explaining changes in the caste system, Andhra Bethel points out specific modification in Sirupura village in Tanjavur. He emphasizes two factors of social honor and esteem associated with the principles of caste rank. One is that the esteem and honor in caste hierarchy is based partially of wealth and partly on how they pursue their lifestyle. Secondly, certain other castes that have acquired political superiority may expect honor or esteem from other castes who rank above them. This ambiguity of status within the same caste group like Samarthas, Sri Vaishnavas, Gurukals and Bhattacharyas in Sripuram village. Similarly, Kallar, Maravar and Ahamudayas constituted under a single name Mukalathor, claiming to have a same origin, do not intermarry because they perceive status difference among themselves. These two factors operating behind the changes in caste hierarchy result in ambiguity of status among the middle range caste groups. For instance, Padayachi in North-South Arcad, Mudaliyars in Chengalpet, Kallars in certain area of Tanjore, Counters in Coimbatore and Salem, Vellalas in Tirunelveli and Nadas in certain areas of Tamil Nadu. There is a third factor to be considered. It is the agrarian background of caste groups. In agricultural areas, the landowners were mostly Brahmins and the landless agricultural labourers were Adi Dravidas as in Sripuram village. Parochialization and universalization. McKim Marriott propounded two important concepts relating to the great and little tradition. There are universalization and parochialization. These two processes are complementary to each other. Universalization refers to downward devolution of elements of great tradition and their integration with the elements of little tradition. For example, the concept of karma in Hinduism. The concept karma has a wide elaboration in Shastras and Upanishad. Teaching of great gurus revolves around it. The same concept prevails in rural areas in simple form as a belief in one's duties and responsibilities. The term parochializing refers to the process by which some Sanskritic elements of great tradition are learnt about and modified by the village or folk people to become a part of their tradition. It constitutes the characteristic creative work of little communities within Indian indigenous civilization. Examples is the stories of Ramayana, of Mahabharata, borrowed and presented to the local people in a manner suitable to the folk culture. Other factors aiding change. Discussion on westernization and Sanskritization might make us think that Sanskritization is a prerequisite to westernization. M. Srinivas clarifies this contention. He agrees that westernization has occurred with undergoing Sanskritization in many parts of India among individuals and groups in cities, villages and tribal areas. It may be expected that industrialization speeding up migration to cities and secularization paved ways to the classless and casteless society. The spread of Christianity and religious conversion was indeed a threat to Hinduism, but the assumption like caste is a group to melt like a butter under westernization cannot be true. Indeed, many technological innovations like microphone, postal and railway system strengthened the religious practices like microphone to be used for bhajans for common people, postal to spread information on caste and religion, and the railways in minimizing untouchability, taboos on sitting together. M. Srinivas has observed that many rituals being abbreviated among the industrialists. Certain ceremonies earlier considered to be a highly religious like life cycle ceremonies like naming ceremony and conjuring are given less importance in later days. As seen in earlier lessons, there are ritual neutralization and compartmentalization were followed to suit their modern life. Wedding rituals performed for 3 to 4 days is now abbreviated and conducted in a less pious form. Similarly, funeral rites are also shortened. Secularization also has its influence on the dowry system that has taken a new form demanding more dowry for marriage, resulted in the rise of age at marriage of girls. According to M. Srinivas, Mysore Brahmin girls remained unmarried as the demand for dowry was very high for doctor, engineers and persons in administrative services. Therefore, the girls went for higher education that has changed the outlook of girls. Many of the girls entered into career. Both Sanskritization and westernization have their impact on the Indian society. While the Sanskritization created changes in the entire socio-cultural life, westernization was largely an urban phenomenon. Westernization is vast, multidimensional and a complex process. It impinged upon various domains through a number of institutions. It opened up fresh avenues of development and accelerated social modernity. After independence, industrialization gained momentum. Both the processes produced certain changes in total system. There was change in self-esteem of caste or groups that aspired for higher status. Caste system so far stood as rigid structure opened ways for mobility and high status. Moreover, there is less psychological pressure among caste groups on the earlier static condition when compared to the stress during mobility. In earlier lessons, we have studied that the status and position within and outside caste system is ambiguous. We need to understand it in a better manner. Caste is said to be a rigid and closed endogamous system with restriction on food habits and observing purity and pollution. There is occupational restriction and one's caste is decided by his birth. It is an ascribed one, but the effort to Sanskritization has created change mainly in adoption of food habits and lifestyle. The principles of endogamy and purity, pollution remained the same. The trend of horizontal change gave psychological satisfaction of status achievement in the case of westernization and simultaneous industrialization, legislation and change. The earlier conditions of caste groups, their mobility in the social ladder were placed under research by many sociologists. They have presented a clear picture of the nature of social change in a closed Indian social system. Decades have passed. A number of paths are available for groups to move vertical. Reforms through legislations were planned for development of the nation. The abolition of zamindari system, abolition of untouchability, Article 17 of the Constitution, abolition of bonded labor and also reservation policy have brought tremendous changes in the social system. The Indian women neglected so far under caste system were given uplift. The Hindu Marriage Act 1955, the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006 and Abolition of Child Labour Act to certain extent empowered women. There are positive sides of mobility and change. Present status, on the other side of the picture, should also be considered. The process social mobility should enable people to move between socio-economic strata in their lifetime and between generations. In closed societies with gradual social change, person's background determines their mobility. According to World Economic Forum's Social Mobility Index 2020-21, a holistic assessment of 82 global economic Indian ranks 76th. A study by World Bank found that in India there is too much difference between the two when compared to other countries. It is because the children do not get better opportunity than their fathers in pursuing new occupation. Intergenerational occupational mobility is comparatively less because of less prosperous background. Indian Human Development Survey indicates that over 75% of sons born to white-collar fathers end up in white-collar jobs and 60% of sons born to manual laborer end up in unskilled peculation under employment of youth is also a perennial problem in India. Reservation for SC and ST is not satisfactorily implemented. Therefore, caste, mobility and change should be planned taking into several factors into account. This only bring in a true of bright social transformation. Education and secularization brought many more transformation that are sensitive and lead to progress of the society. Due to industrial migration, Brahmins as well as non-Brahmins had to take up new occupations withering their traditional ones. They could not strictly observe the principle of purity and pollution. This unfold the avenues for people of different caste move with each other. The new educational system, mainly under the Christian missionaries, gave opportunity for non-Brahmins to broaden their values on equality. The new occupation rendered higher status to all. Irrespective of caste background, new avenues placed them in an achieved status characteristics of a class system. But what is ambiguous is even under the achieved position, the caste identity was maintained by all groups, which we cannot conclude either as good or bad.